No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live episode number 250. We are back live, and for such a special episode number, some news of my own. I've just flown back from Barbados this morning, where I popped the question to the love of my life, my best friend, my soulmate, my business partner, the works. Alan, you poor man, you are now stuck with me forever, because he did say yes, by the way. So I'll try and tell you a little bit more about this later in the after show with Angela Levin, but we really do need to get to the news today, because breaking right now, Tommy Robinson has launched a furious attack on Slippery Starmer, Jess Phillips, Nick Lowles of Hope Not Hate, and Owen Jones, as the UK's Labour establishment have finally been exposed for the historic cover-up of the Pakistani Muslim rape gang scandal.
I just hope that every person, you see Nick Lowles, you see Owen Jones, you see Jess Phillips, Keir Starmer, the entire Labour establishment that attacked every single person. Do you know the people who lost their jobs, lost their livelihoods, lost their reputations, smeared, attacked, violently attacked, imprisoned? So many people, all from start to finish, to cover up the dirty hands of politicians and police leaders who allowed this. They allowed it. They covered it up.
And all of a sudden, GB News, which has banned Tommy Robinson from day one and seen its star presenters brand him a racist and white supremacist, now seem to want to talk about him.
The Guardian was even worse. What they were saying was, we think it's disgusting that people like Robinson and Mark Steen and the rest of them are all saying this kind of stuff, right?
So my reaction to the devastating 197-page Casey report and the cover-up of Britain's rape gangs in the Digest. Then the superstar panel weigh-in. Today, Alex Phillips of That's What She Said on Substack, and Emma Dunwell of the excellent independent news outlet Resistance GB. Also coming up on the show today, a civil war at BBC Breakfast involving Naga, Munchetty and Charlie Stayt, among a host of physical and verbal bullying claims on the crisis-plagued daytime news programme. And it's a very sad day here at Outspoken. We're going to mark the death of TV legend, the Queen of Clean, and I have to say, my favourite Outspoken guest ever, Kim Woodburn, who has died after a short illness, aged just 83. Then, in the uncancelled after show on Substack, Meghan Markle gives her longest interview yet, demanding the truth be revealed about her in a 90-minute podcast with Kardashian ally Emma Greedy. But let me tell you, she should be careful what she wishes for. Our royal mastermind, Angela Levin, and I have watched this latest car crash, so you don't have to. We will bring you all of the lowlights over on Substack, www.outspoken.live. Register right now and join the Outspoken revolution. Because we're back live, it also means the return of Our Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Your nominees for UJ today: Jess Phillips, nominated by Karen Hankey for raising a smile and laugh when the Casey report was being discussed. I'm going to show you that video in just one moment. Yvette Cooper, nominated by the Grift Report, who says she should resign over the Pakistani grooming gang cover-up and them trying to blame the far right and now admitting it was a cover-up. And Emily Maitlis, nominated by Trooper237, who says she owes Rupert Lowe a massive apology for calling him racist. You could see the snaring anger pouring out of her. Vile. So, 3 choices along a similar theme. You can vote right now in our live chat on YouTube. Leave me your comments too. I'm so happy to be back live. I will be reading out the best at the end of the show. So stick with us today. But now, let's go. The 197-page Casey report shames Britain. It exposes the Westminster establishment, the mainstream media, virtually every politician, the police, basically our entire squalid deep state. And while the findings are important and historic and have forced Starmer into this humiliating U-turn, I will admit, having read the entire thing, that I am still concerned. So there's not one mention of Tommy Robinson in the report, but where he is alluded to, it's under the pretense of bad actors who could use this ongoing scandal for what the report describes as clickbait. Now, trust me, as someone who has covered the story in the independent media, there is nothing to be gained commercially from reporting on the Pakistani Muslim British rape gang cover-up. Nothing at all. Big tech actually does all it can to throttle any coverage of this subject. And this is a subject, of course, that has seen so many victims, like Sammy Woodhouse and Samantha Smith, and so many patriots like Tommy Robinson, Mark Stein, and Katie Hopkins try to bring to the mainstream at great personal and commercial cost. Big tech doesn't want us talking about this, okay? Now, just this year, Slippery Starmer, our despicably evil Prime Minister, claimed a national inquiry into the scandal and its cover-up would be jumping onto a far-right bandwagon.
When politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth, and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
I mean, I actually feel visceral anger watching that. I'm sure you do too. But if there's any positive to come out of this mess, it is that these scumbags have now been exposed for all time. We will never forget their lies, their cover-ups, all to protect their failed mass immigration project of bringing Islam to the United Kingdom. Like Owen Jones, who literally called this whole thing a lie.
About vulnerable white girls being targeted by British Pakistani grooming gangs. Now, that is the sort of thing you would have expected to read in BNP leaflets, and which not that long ago would actually have been condemned by Tory and Labour politicians alike. But we are in 2023 in the worst possible timeline. It's not true. It's really important to make this very, very clear.
Or how about London's failed mayor, Sadiq Khan, who wouldn't even, up until a few weeks ago, wouldn't even admit the existence of these rape gangs to his Tory rival Susan Hall, who is quite rightly now claiming victory.
Well, it turns out that this far-right bandwagon that I've been on for quite some time, because I've been calling for a national inquiry on the rape gangs, turns out that there's a new person joined us in the form of our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. So the big question for us in London, is Sadiq Khan going to join us? Because the last time I spoke to him, he didn't know what I was talking about. But then that's our mayor for you.
But look, I have to be honest with you. I don't know if there is anyone more complicit in this evil than Jess Phillips, the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, who insisted, do you remember this? She insisted there was no need for a national inquiry. And do you know why she did that? Well, I'll tell you, it's because she is so concerned about losing her parliamentary seat to an extreme Muslim candidate, as very nearly happened last year at the general election. And do you know what was particularly sick? Yesterday in Parliament, she literally couldn't wipe the smug smirk off her face.
Want not just to get to the truth about past failures, but also to make sure that we make the changes to protect children for the future as well. That includes changes in social services, it includes changes in policing and the police operation that I hope that she would welcome to take action to put perpetrators behind bars, and also the action to gather proper ethnicity data, which simply has not been gathered properly before, law, and where Louise Casey's report is very clear. It is totally inadequate, the data gathering that her previous government left behind. So I hope she would agree to all of those being extremely important so that we can get stronger protection and truth for.
Sickening behaviour. Sickening behaviour. What are you laughing at, Jess Phillips? What is funny about this situation? Have to say, though, it wasn't quite as sickening as her appearance on Newsnight.
Look, people have turned a blind eye. There's no I'm not denying that.
Including you?
Absolutely not me. I have never turned a blind eye. I never would shy away from calling a problem what it is.
What? What? I mean, as even the left-wing columnist Dan Hodges posted on X, this is staggering. Jess Phillips literally rejected Oldham Council's request for national support for their inquiry. That's how all this exploded. She literally criticised Katie Lamb for raising the ethnicity of the perpetrators. It's all a matter of public record. But of course, on Newsnight, she tried to blame Labour's favourite bogeyman, the non-existent far right. Oh, and the former Prime Minister Liz Truss, who was forced from office in a deep state coup. Watch.
You mentioned the Prime Minister. You will remember that he described the calls back in January for a national inquiry as people jumping on a bandwagon of the far right. When you reflect on that, was that wise?
Look, I think that what the Prime Minister was saying was, because this was in the wake of sort of Elon Musk furore, was that the Conservative politicians, Kemi Badenoch, the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, that he was saying they were jumping on the bandwagon that of Elon Musk talking about on Twitter. I think it was actually Liz Truss. She gets forgotten in this story. Liz Truss who started it, and then Elon Musk carried it on. Is that he was like, where have you been? You've just been in government. You were the policing minister and the children's minister. Where have you been? And frankly,
but was that a knee-jerk reaction? Simply because they are politicians on the right?
No, I think it's because they're politicians who had never cared and thought it was politically expedient.
Oh my God. Now, Truss responded to that. Good on her for doing so, saying, I accused Jess Phillips of excusing masked Islamist thugs, which she did, and of rejecting Oldham's calls for a government inquiry into grooming gangs, which she did. It was not a far-right bandwagon. It was about holding her to account for her complete dereliction of duty. But it's not just political figures, because the MSM in Britain must never be trusted again. Can you believe that Lewis Goodall has done a total 180? He's now trying to hold Labour politicians to account for that far-right smear on LBC. But it's pointless, because he was part of it. Do you remember his treatment of the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman?
You asserted that perpetrators of child grooming gangs in the UK were almost all British Pakistani. Now you had to, that was chastised, wasn't it? Entirely rightly, because it was a false claim.
Well, I disagree with the ruling from Ipso, and subsequent reports and data has shown that to be wrong. Lewis, what you're doing is you're zooming out. You're zooming out and you're looking at it from the broad umbrella.
I put it to you again, you may say you disagree with it. What do you disagree about with the Ipso claim that said that what you said about the clear majority, or virtually all of grooming gangs being almost all British Pakistani, when Ipso said to you that what you said was significantly misleading, and the Mail on Sunday had to actually put in a retraction of it? What do you disagree about?
Right, so again, Lewis, so what you're doing is what you always do, which is why you've got facts? You've called it wrong on a lot of political issues in recent months and years. You're fixating on tone. You're fixating on tone. And
I'm not fixating on tone. It's about facts, Suella Braverman. So it's about facts.
I've responded to your
said that what you said was significantly misleading.
I've responded to your question about Ipso, which is I disagree with the ruling. They've based it on a flawed set of data.
So do not try and take the high ground now, Lewis Goodall. And as ever, despite the Casey report making it abundantly clear that Pakistani Asian men are the problem when it comes to this crime in the United Kingdom, Susanna Reid decided to return to her usual shtick of bashing white blokes.
I just want to ask you specifically, you say most of this abuse is caused by or perpetrated by men of Pakistani origin. The figures that I have seen show that most of this child sexual abuse is actually committed by white perpetrators, but there is a disproportionate amount of abuse of this type committed by men of Pakistani origin. Are you taking issue with that statistic when you say most is caused by men of Pakistani origin? I just think we need to be careful with the terms here as well.
So you might be referring to some police data from 20...
I'm sitting at motorway services.
No, Susanna, no. Look, when you're looking at this in the round, if you're Tommy Robinson, who we just saw there, who has literally been demonized and locked up for attempting to blow the whistle on this scandal for, I think, over a decade and a half now, is it any wonder you're goddamn furious?
I just hope that every person, you see Nick Lowles, you see Owen Jones, you see Jess Phillips, Keir Starmer, the entire Labour establishment that attacked every single person. So the people who lost their jobs, lost their livelihoods, lost their reputations, smeared, attacked, violently attacked, imprisoned. So many people, all from start to finish, to cover up the dirty hands of politicians and police leaders who allowed this. They allowed it. They covered it up. And they come down like a ton of bricks on anyone who tried to speak about it. And right now, those same people who acted in that way are trying to rewrite fucking history. They're trying to rewrite history as though they were on the side of the children. You were on the side of the rapists. Labour, you were on the side of the rapists. Yes, I'm angry. And so should every single person in Britain be angry. Because you see all those traitors in Parliament, all of them sitting there in Parliament, they all knew what was happening. You see the entire mainstream media, every one of the journalists, they all knew what was happening. You see Andrew Norfolk, who won all the awards for exposing this, he knew what was happening. Every one of them knew what was happening. They let it happen. They didn't care. In fact, right now, they'd still be letting it happen. It would still be allowed to happen. If it wasn't for the people who stuck to the streets, if it wasn't for the survivors, if it wasn't for the whistleblowers, do not allow them to rewrite history. Any of them. Don't allow Labour politicians, don't allow the mainstream media, don't allow any of them to rewrite history. Because every one of them had dirty hands. Every single one of them. Scum, the lot of you. And everyone, everything will be unveiled. Everything's coming out. Everything. You see, when they do this national inquiry, do we trust them? Do you trust them? I'm going to do my episode anyway. I'm going to show you Labour's involvement. But do you trust them? And you see if the truth comes out on this. Do you know how many of them need to go to jail? Police leaders, council leaders, politicians, all the way to the top. You see that filthy Labour scumbag, Sean Davies, trying to rewrite history. It's like, what are you doing? You can't rewrite history. You've all got dirty hands. It's all coming out. There's going to be nowhere for you to hide. Nowhere.
No, of course we do not trust them. Tommy is right. I understand his anger. I feel it. Today, you might be able to tell, we are being led by scum. Now, Dominic Cummings knows how the swamp operates, and I want to share with you what he's said about this. Important to register on the gangs, the government is refusing to authorise investigation of police, social workers, etc. who worked with the gangs. Thus stopping the inquiry, looking at the Whitehall cover-ups. There's obviously no justification for this other than continuing the cover-ups to maintain the old regime. But in doing this, they're burying the credibility of the old regime, not saving it. The old regime's loop is in the same state as David Cameron's when he walked onto a London hotel roof to rant about Turkey joining the EU 2016. And then on the failure of our media class, which you know is something that I've looked at closely, Dominic Cummings added, remember what many MSM pundits were saying at Christmas? Fraser Nelson, UK integration story, a beacon of hope. Our streets are now safer than they have perhaps ever been. Our immigrant population has almost doubled while our crime rate has halved. We seem to have attracted immigrants who, by and large, are prone to integrate and strengthen the social fabric. Ah, yes, Dominic Cummings said, diversity is our strength. British values. And if people in small boats were leaving Dover and risking death to reach Calais, we'd have more cause to worry. The boats are actually a sign of our success, dummies. And then he pointed to Lewis Goodall, who said in January, far-right thinking has become mainstream. Remember that the notion of ubiquitous Muslim grooming gangs has long been a trope of extremism, despite little evidence. And Cummings said for NBC Goodall, the real story is not the gangs, but the emergence of a common UK-US online right, making extremist until recently fringe politics mainstream and Britain conservatism. SW1 sensible mainstream 100% on brand. And then what about Nick Lowles of that stinking government-funded charity Hope Not Hate, who's finally admitted the government is right to call an inquiry? But Stephen Wolfe responded to him saying, this is about as low as a lefty grooming gang apologist will get to an apology. Nick led calls to stigmatise as racist anyone who claimed that the paedophile and grooming gangs were a majority ethnic composition, including from Tommy Robinson to Suella Braverman. His organisation contributed to the division in this country whilst parading as offering hope. Their hate for those who raise the issue is clear. Hope Not Hate should have all its government funding withdrawn, but don't hold your breath. And no, we won't. But as ex-Coronation Street star Charlie Lawson revealed in his usual colourful language, ordinary Brits are finally waking up.
Jesus. You wouldn't fucking follow him to Marks and Spencer's, would you? Anyway, he has finally seen the light. Well, he hasn't. He's been kicked up the fucking arse by some people in Westminster, no doubt. And we are to have a national inquiry into the rape gangs. And I don't care. They're not grooming gangs. They're rape gangs. Let's say it how it is. I don't give a shit what race they are. They're rape gangs. And now the shit will hit the fan, because hopefully Sammy Woodhouse and her friends and all the rest of those wonderful young ladies from Grooming, a National Disgrace documentary, will start speaking up again, and we can get these people who started all these cover-ups and kept them going. And listen, I've no time for Dominic Cummings, but at least he can have the balls to say it as it is. We're coming to get you, all you councillors in Rochdale, Oldham, Blackburn, Birmingham, everywhere. You're going to get your asses fucking kicked. Cheerio now.
Now, today's superstar panel. And it is a pleasure to have her back, Alex Phillips of the That's What She Said Substack, and joining Outspoken for the first time, Emma Dunwell, the independent journalist of Resistance GB. So, Alex, I mean, has our elite class finally been exposed?
Yeah, they've definitely been exposed. And I think actually in the wake of the Casey report, I'm now beginning to think that the entire existence of the government is untenable. Now, I don't say that loosely. I don't say that in a blasé manner because I despise the Labour Party, which I do. But what we have seen is a safeguarding minister who said that having a national inquiry would be a far-right bandwagon, repeating the Prime Minister who said much the same thing. We know that all of these acts, by and large, were perpetrated in Labour-controlled councils. We know that Labour-controlled councils themselves didn't want to do their own independent inquiries, only Oldham, which the safeguarding minister then blocked. We also know the Labour Party have a rather strange relationship when it comes to Muslim criminality. There was the cover-up of what happened in Southport, gaslighting the entire public that this was a terrorist offence of an Islamist. There's lots of history of things such as postal vote fraud within Muslim communities voting for the Labour Party. I could go on and on and on, not answering the question on the burqa. We had Lucy Powell on any questions. I mean, the Labour Party now, it is very clear, every single time, have decided to appease or condone criminality within one particular community in the United Kingdom in order to garner their votes or because they're afraid of them. And when it comes to the safety and the protection of little girls, can you imagine, other than actual genocide, killing, genocide, any other crime that comes close to what happened to white girls at the hands of Muslim men? And they're doing it again, of course. They're saying, oh, it's British Pakistanis. No, actually, the Casey report pointed out there's asylum seekers, other foreign nationals. The common denominator, these men are from Muslim background, and the Labour Party still won't speak to that. They're still gaslighting us. They're still trying to fiddle this inquiry. So nothing about their involvement, their local councillors, their ministers gets covered at all. They're going to make the inquiry a busted flush. They're still lying to us. They're still gaslighting us. I watched that interview with Jess Phillips on Newsnight. I saw her arrogant little cocky defensive smile on those green benches. And I thought, this is the biggest issue. This is the biggest issue in our recent history as a nation. What has been allowed to be perpetrated, swept under the carpet, and is still going on today. And if we expect this government, the ones who seem to appease Muslim criminality, to be the ones to finally have an open conversation and sort it out, it's not going to happen. So how, when this is the most despicable, disgusting crime, an issue of national importance, how can we have them sitting in number 10 Downing Street, sitting around the cabinet table and trust them to do something about it, when all they've done is lie, cover up, gaslight, and actually put people in prison, intimidate people for speaking out? This government's now untenable. This government has to go.
Couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. Emma Dunwell, so great to have you here. Do you share some of my concerns, though? Because, look, I read the whole report, and it is incredibly powerful. And the fact is that time and again, our elite class have decided to literally cover up the ethnicity of these serial rapists because they're worried about community cohesion. However, I didn't like the fact that within the report, they're still saying, but this could give rise to online clickbait. It's almost like the same sort of thing, like slamming Tommy Robinson, slamming this invisible far right.
Well, yeah, Dan, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me on. The issue with the grooming gangs, there is no doubt that this has been covered up. But these girls have been betrayed on a systematic scale. We already know that Labour have essentially bought votes from certain demographics, and it's never been racist to recognise a statistic. Now we have those statistics in black and white so that they can no longer be denied, but we all knew it. And like you said, we were all branded as far right, jumping on a bandwagon. And I think it's very telling that even when Tommy Robinson is alluded to within the report, they're still very careful to attribute any credit to him for the advocacy that he did around this. I mean, I was watching a Tim Pool video on this earlier today, and he said, you know, in the States, that's how everyone found out about it, through Tommy Robinson. It wasn't through the mainstream media. They didn't care. And now that this report has come out, all of a sudden they feel the need to cover their own backs, as always. And who's taken the brunt of what's gone wrong is the victims. I mean, even some of these victims have criminal records from when they were under the coercion of these gangs. I mean, Sammy Woodhouse even just said she's lost her legal battle to get her name cleared from those charges. And it's just disgusting. The government does not care about these girls.
Absolutely not. And it is only through people like Sammy Woodhouse, who were brave enough to risk so much, actually, in coming forward, that really did wake up the country to what has gone on. But I agree with you. There is a concern in that tone of the report, not wanting to acknowledge Tommy Robinson, still tiptoeing around this invisible far right as if we've done something wrong. And it's like, no. We have reported the truth. You haven't. So don't be worried about our reaction. It's your reaction. It's the elite class reaction. It's the mainstream media reaction, which put all of these young women at risk for such a long time. And it is a stain on society. If you watched our interview on Outspoken yesterday, Alison Pearson now says it is the biggest scandal in British history. Developing right now, growing claims that GB News is preparing to change its editorial position on Tommy Robinson after the Casey report vindicated him over the Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs. Now, this is, of course, a fascinating development given that loads of that channel presenters have for a long time described Tommy Robinson as a white supremacist, as racist. And indeed, that coverage was even continuing on the channel last night. Watch.
Running away and denying the recommendations. I think Leo actually raised a really good point that, as a man of the left, it is quite easy to get insular. And if you see people like, your man Tommy Robinson talking about it, he was one of the big guys shouting about it. But then he'd also put something heinous on the back end of it, so it's quite easy to dismiss. So I think a lot of people on the left did just see nutters like Tommy talking about it.
Heinous on it, because I've not really seen anything that he said that was particularly.
He wants to ban Islam, which is
like I said, I haven't seen anything I disagree with.
No, come on. Tommy Robinson is objectively a racist man that hates Muslims.
What did he say? What did he say that's racist?
Oh, heinous things about all brown people. He calls all brown people perverts.
How has got so many brown mates?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. What?
He works alongside brown people. I don't understand. I know there's a lot of there's certainly a lot of.
He doxed a 14-year-old brown lad, accused him of heinous things that he hadn't done. That lad had to go into witness protection. Like, he's done heinous things. He used to beat up police officers. He's done immigration fraud. He nicked a load of money off his fundraising supporters. He's a bad guy.
I think we're just straying into quite dicey legal territory here when it comes to something.
Well, seriously, that's not a good enough response from the presenter there, because it's not just dicey legal territory. It's a full-on litany of lies, and it is these lies that the mainstream media have used to cover up the Pakistani Muslim rape gang scandal by turning someone like Tommy Robinson into a false bogeyman. Now, Tommy was clearly not happy about that segment. He posted on X, "Who is this lying twerp on GB News?" And of course, GB News does remain a thorn in the side of Tommy. Its main presenters for many months have continued to propagate this myth about him being the bad guy of the piece, led, of course, by Nigel Farage. Watch.
Harrison's talked about this, but he has a criminal record, a list as long as your arm. Violence against women. I could go on, Nick. And all I'm saying is, look, Mr. Robinson, do what the hell you like. We are totally separate from that. If I was to embrace, as it looks like I was being urged to do, the sort of violent, thuggish people like Robinson, that would do our party immense harm.
And Farage is certainly not GB News' only presenter that feels this way. Here's Patrick Christie's.
Of Tommy Robinson in this loose role as advisor on grooming gangs. A, what advice do you need on grooming gangs? B, do you want that advice coming from a man like Tommy Robinson? It's not a good look for the party whatsoever. Frankly, it's not a good look for society, and I do really think this just demonstrates, actually, that there is an undercurrent, not this subtle level of racism that's been levelled at UKIP in the past. I think you could argue that this is now much more overt.
Or how about Camilla Tominey on ITV's This Morning?
Elon Musk doesn't quite seem to understand who Tommy Robinson is and what he represents, which is a misunderstanding that is sometimes seen across the pond, Americans and Canadians thinking that Tommy Robinson is some kind of, misunderstood folklore figure, when in fact he's a convicted criminal and white supremacist who hasn't really done much. In fact, he's currently serving a sentence for contempt of court.
Now, describing Tommy Robinson as a white supremacist is completely outrageous, and there is now a split within GB News because Michelle Dewberry and Ben Leo, two of its other senior presenters, have now come out publicly and said that Tommy deserves an apology. And I think when I show you this interview, it's an iconic interview between Tommy Robinson and Jeremy Paxman on Newsnight in, wait for it, 2011. So what's that? 14 years. Is that right? 14 years ago. It's impossible to disagree that he does deserve a grovelling apology. Watch.
The only one who's been murdered by a Muslim gang, you probably don't, I do. Do you know any 15-year-old girls that you know that you've grown up with that have been raped or pimped? You don't. So I don't expect you to understand the issues.
These are all personal issues of yours.
Personal issues in towns and cities like mine that are happening, and they're not happening with the Sikh community, they're not happening with the Jewish community.
And indeed, they're not happening with most Muslims.
No, they're happening within the Islamic community. This is what I'm saying, that it's an Islamic problem. And when I'm just a simple person, so I'm just a normal person, but when I'm looking at, I have to look for where this hatred's coming from.
So are you seriously suggesting there aren't white drug dealers and there aren't white gangs?
Of course I'm not, no.
Or
but
Sikh gangs or any other kind of...
No, I'm not, but I'm saying some of these specific issues are coming from the Islamic community, solely the Islamic community. Terrorists wanting to blow us up, constant hostile activity towards our youth, all these problems, and from sitting back, there's got to be something it's coming from. None of the other communities are spreading it, so we're a symptom of the problem. The English Defence League are a
You're
symptom.
claiming that community is spreading it. Actually, what we're talking about
Members of the
here...
community.
Yes, exactly, as you could talk about
I'm not saying
members
the
of the
whole
white community doing all sorts of atrocious things.
Yeah, but not 24-year-old groups of 10 of them hanging around outside school gates.
You've never seen a white gang?
And purposely targeting...
Never seen a white gang?
Are we going to pretend that Muslim groups are not out there purposely targeting our youth and pimping them? Are we going to pretend it's not
You're
happening?
not pretending white people aren't doing that?
Then not in the same manner, not in the same group. They're saying it's a cultural thing.
Now, what Tommy Robinson is saying there is exactly what the Casey report is saying in 2025. So the first on-air talent on GB News to break cover on this issue is Calvin McKenzie, and I give him a lot of credit for this. So he initially posted on X a round of applause for the reviled Tommy Robinson and the banished Mark Steyn as Home Secretary Yvette Cooper finally admits that every word they ever said about the rapes of hundreds and hundreds of white girls by Muslim men was true. Politicians on all sides should be totally ashamed of themselves for dismissing them as racists, as should every MSM journalist, mainly Guardian staff. A front-page apology from The Guardian should be the minimum. A donation to the victims would be appropriate. With the notable exception of The Times, none of the national media believed the girls. The Sun was terrible, preferring not to run the sexual abuse stories for fear it would chase away the advertisers. Another dreadful mistake by a bloody, awful management. And then Calvin McKenzie, and again, I congratulate him. Calvin's brave. I love him, actually. I really, really do. He went on GB News and he told the truth about Tommy Robinson and Mark Steyn. Watch.
This is the shocking reality. Is the man that was 100% right on all this and was reviled by every single side of the political spectrum was Tommy Robinson. Right? He was a lone voice saying this is going on, this is going on. He says, yeah, there are aspects to him. I quite understand. Not everybody's cup of tea by 1,000 miles, not particularly mine. He was right about this. And the other one that was banished by it was the guy who used to be a presenter here. He made these points. The Guardian was even worse. What they were saying was, we think it's disgusting that people like Robinson and Mark Steyn and the rest of them are all saying this kind of stuff, right?
Good on Calvin McKenzie. You could see the horror on Jacob Rees-Mogg's face. And Samantha Smith, a survivor, also posted on this saying, this is going to upset some people, but I really don't care. GB News didn't expose the Pakistani Muslim grooming gang scandal. Broadcasters like Mark Steyn were covering it decades ago. Survivors like Sammy Woodhouse were sharing their stories long before GB News interviewed them. Whistleblowers like Maggie Oliver were speaking out against institutional failings as they happened. GB News has done great work, but they came in at the 11th hour. They can't claim credit for the decades of groundwork laid by those before them and ignore the years of work by those who spoke out and suffered for their bravery long before GB News ever existed. So let me bring in my superstar panel, former GB News presenter, now independent Substack journalist Alex Phillips, and Emma Dunhill of Resistance GB. So, Alex Phillips, this is a difficult position now for GB News, isn't it? Ever since launch, and I'm sure you experienced the same thing as I did, there was this blanket ban, and some of us would try to get around it, but there was an absolute decision made by management that Tommy Robinson would not be allowed on the channel. Now, since you've gone independent, you have interviewed Tommy Robinson. You have decided that he is an important part of this picture. And what seems quite clear to me is that there is some type of civil war developing within GB News, because you've got Michelle Dewberry saying, look, we've got to apologise to this guy. But then you've got Nigel, on the other hand, saying, no, he comes nowhere near us.
Yeah, well, look, Nigel's thinking about his route to number 10 and what's going to be politically expedient, as he needs to do. Unfortunately, politics is a rough and tumble game where very often, if you want to build cohorts of voters, you've got to play by a set of rules that you don't believe in and don't agree with. And so I think that's what he's doing. He realises if Reform or he as an individual ever turned around and endorsed Tommy Robinson, it would create furore among mainstream media who still have an oppressive effect on votes, and this sort of creating a sense of shame about something. So I think he's just being political, whereas Michelle Dewberry doesn't have that issue. When it comes to GB News, the problem is GB News is run by an Australian who doesn't necessarily understand this country or the history of it. And they're constantly trying to chase where the viewers are. When the Overton window shifts, they want to run after it as if they've always been there at the crest of the wave, rather than sort of waiting to see in which direction the wind's going to blow. And I partially understand this as a broadcaster, being concerned about the regulator Ofcom, equally being attacked and demonized and having embargoes and campaigns against advertising, because that loses you money. So, you know, both people, whether it's GB News or Nigel Farage, have their own reason, they have their own skin in the game to be a little bit lily-livered over this issue. And I appreciate there are lots of people up and down the country, probably in positions of authority, who quietly around the dinner table say, I actually really like Tommy Robinson, but would dare not breathe those words out loud in public, because such a brilliant job has been done to, as you said, turn him into the bogeyman. It's a distraction technique. Oh, look over here. Yep. Here's a massive racist. Here's a criminal. Here's a monster. Look at this man. Isn't he bad? Which means don't look at what he's pointing at. And they've done this now for decades. And especially that interview of Jeremy Paxman was just astonishing. You know, it's like back in a time capsule and going, oh my goodness me. If he said that today, everyone would be venerating him as a hero, the working class whistleblower who was pointing out something that was so disgusting and so dangerous. But he was massively ahead of his time. And I realized in speaking to him that this was a really important person to speak to, a social phenomenon. I wanted to find out who the man was, his motivations, his background. I wanted to look into the history of the EDL. Were they really the sort of violent, criminal, thuggish entity that they were portrayed as being? I looked through lots of videos and footage of their rallies and demos, and couldn't really see much to that effect, other than, you know, what looks like pure unbridled classism and the ease with which the establishments were able to point at, you know, good old working class men up and down the country and label them as monstrous skinheads, ignorant, you know, illiterate, unseemly, immoral scumbags. And this is what they do, and that's what they did to the victims as well. Let's be fair. This is what they also did to the white working class girls, who these Muslim men were systemically abusing. They decided that the girls weren't worth it. They're working class. They get themselves into trouble. Oh, well, they go off with these men. We may as well consider them prostitutes, but let's protect the men. It's been an absolute atrocity. It's disgusting. We live in a world, sadly, in the United Kingdom, and I don't know how this has come to pass, where people who do want to whistleblow, people who do want to speak out, really feel like there's too much for them to lose. And Tommy Robinson was making that point in his own video today on social media, saying, what about all the people who have lost jobs, who have been ostracized, who up in prison? And now all of a sudden you've got these venal and vain politicians jumping up and going, I said it, I always believed it, well, I always thought this, I've always wanted to talk out about this, oh, it wasn't me looking the other way. And we know that so many people on so many issues, when it comes to either taking the easy road of protecting themselves, whatever the cost to somebody else, whatever the atrocity taking place, actually take the easy road. People look at what happened in Nazi Germany and say, how on earth did so many members of the population just go along with this? Because they were scared. They were scared of being reported. They were scared of losing their employments. They were scared of being sent to Coventry and banished from their social circles. They were afraid of being punished by the state, by the regime. And so they decided that actually it was better to go along with it and turn a blind eye to the fact that millions of Jews were being massacred. Now, I'm not saying that this is the same apples and pears it may be,
But you equally have plenty of people in the public, whether they held public official positions, whether they're in mainstream media, whether they're politicians, whether they're school teachers, whether they're doctors or nurses or just neighbours or milkmen. There are plenty of people who willfully decided to turn a blind eye to what was going on because it was easier for them to fit in, for their livelihoods, for their security. A lot of people drank the Kool-Aid. Maybe I'm being too harsh, and maybe a lot of people just didn't realise and needed a report, an official report to come out before their eyes were open and the scales fell away.
No, because there've been
I
so
don't think
many. And there's been
No, they
so
hide behind the
many.
report.
Yeah.
They hide behind
and
the
then
report.
nothing changed. Nothing changed. And Emma Dunwell, I want to ask you about Katie Hopkins as well, because there's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of days that she deserves an apology too. I mean, Basil the Great put this out on X, and then Katie actually joined in saying, just waiting on my apology for your threats of arrest, Greater Manchester Police, and you, Simon Danchok, you are a serpent indeed. And again, that was simply because she publicly, I think she was at the Sun newspaper at the time, linked the rape gang scandal specifically with Pakistani Muslim men. So does Katie Hopkins actually deserve an apology too?
She absolutely does. I think Katie Hopkins is one of those people who's always been outspoken on these topics and has never apologized for it. And that's what people want. That's what people need, especially when our own politicians are doing the best that they can to cover everything up. Katie Hopkins, Tommy Robinson, they both deserve a massive apology. It's absolutely disgusting the way they've been treated. I mean, you only have to look at more severe cases, I would argue, like Peter Lynch, where he actually passed away in prison. I mean, it's just awful. For holding a placard. Lucy Connolly, right now, is a mother taken away from her family for a tweet. And we have domestic abusers, we have rapists, we have paedophiles just being let out to make room in the prisons for all these far-right thugs. It's an absolute joke. I mean, just right down to the age of consent in UK legislation, it says that a girl between the ages of 13 to 15, it's not automatically classed as rape, and they will explore if she consented or if she was in love with them. I mean, these are children. If we're arguing against legislation that literally argues the fact that a child can consent, that goes against our own age of consent laws, where can you win? People have no option but to turn to the likes of Tommy Robinson and Katie Hopkins because they actually say it how it is.
Totally. Well, look, we've just got Starmer now responding on GB News to its political editor, Chris Hope, on whether he regrets ever describing this as a far-right bandwagon. I don't think we're going to get a straight answer, but this is the first time I've seen this. So
when you said to me in January in that hospital, you said that it's a far-right bandwagon if you're calling for national inquiry. I know you're talking about politicians, but a lot of GB News viewers and listeners were also concerned, and they felt you were calling them far-right. Would you perhaps regret that remark?
Well, I wasn't calling them far-right. Now, Chris, I think you may have been in the room, and
yes, I was there.
You will have known. I said expressly, politicians, and I mean politicians, and I was expressly calling out politicians who had been in office and done nothing, and it was them that I was criticising.
It's not a far-right issue, is it?
No, and I was certainly wasn't criticising your viewers, but I think if you look at what I said, and I know you have done carefully and you'll have listened to it, I'm very, very explicit, because there's one thing that I find frustrating. It's politicians who had the opportunity in power to do something about it and did absolutely nothing. Now claiming, late to the issue, that the only ones that have ever raised the issue. I've been raising this issue for 15 years. I'm really glad that I'm the Prime Minister that's actually now put in place a national inquiry, something which wasn't done over the last...
We're challenging them too. So, Keir Starmer, thank you for joining today.
Alex Phillips, what a load of nonsense.
Oh my God, I was the only one. I've been calling this out for 15 years. When? When were you doing that? Oh, I'm so proud I'm the politician who's going to be the first person to have a national inquiry. You didn't want it. You said it was far-right bandwagon. This man is a gaslighter. What I hate so much about him and Jess Phillips, they don't admit a mistake, but what they do is they call the rest of us names, they demean us, they silence us, they intimidate us. And then when they suddenly find that they've been caught with their pants down, they tell like, I didn't do that.
Oh no, I've always thought this. These people are disgusting. This is why this government has to go, because they're still lying. They're still manoeuvring. They're still gaslighting. They have to go.
Yep, totally. And look, just an indication of how widespread this is. We've got a super chat in during this conversation from Catherine. I won't read her last name, who says, Emma, I was locked in a taxi by a Pakistani Muslim man. I had to fight my way out. I found out he was out on bail for raping a woman and sexually assaulting another. I contacted the police and they were useless. And the police have a lot of blood on their hands in this whole issue, don't they, as well, Emma, as much
Absolutely.
as that is horrifying to realise.
Absolutely. I mean, there are cases of girls who have been trafficked, abused, raped, and then simply sent back to them afterwards because they were drunk or disorderly, and they were cautioned with child prostitution. This is just absolutely abhorrent. It will forever be a stain on our country's history.
Yes, it
and
will.
I agree with Alex. The only way that this will ever be even begin to be solved is with a complete revamp of the people in power. I mean, let's not forget, if I remember rightly, Keir Starmer put a three-line whip on the decision with the Child Safety Act, which included a national inquiry. So he never wanted an inquiry to happen. None of them did, because they were all importing votes.
100%. And we will not forget. We must not forget. And I think Alex is right to say that actually this government has lost its authority to lead this country. And that could, I think, prove pretty devastating for the state of the United Kingdom in the months and hopefully not years to come. Breaking today, a civil war on the BBC breakfast programme with its two presenters, Naga Munchetty and Charlie Stayt, at each other's throats. Now, this is becoming a real issue for the corporation, the British bashing corporation, as I call it, given this is a news department that has been scandal-ridden in recent years. Hugh Edwards, ring any bells? But here's the report from the Sun newspaper today. BBC breaking point, toxic feud destroying BBC breakfast exposed, with bullying probe tip of the iceberg and Naga Munchetty at her wit's end. The newspaper reports that the toxic feud ripping apart BBC Breakfast can today be exposed in full after The Sun revealed the show was facing a bullying probe. Tension between presenters Naga Munchetty and Charlie Stayt are threatening to combust over opposing views behind the scenes, and workers feel uneasy around the programme's draconian boss Richard Frediani if they are not in his clique, with Naga at her wit's end over allegations of toxicity. Now, it's even been claimed that this producer physically shook a lower-ranking female editor with a complaint upheld after a BBC investigation. The source has told The Sun the probe into Freddie's bullying is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to BBC Breakfast. In reality, the smiles on the red sofa mask growing tension and an increasingly toxic culture driven from the top down, with its unwitting presenters at the heart. Naga is incredibly approachable and friendly to everyone on set. Charlie is very professional and tries to disengage from any politics. But some stars like Sally Nugent are loved by Freddie, whereas others like Naga and Charlie are not. And I mean, let's be honest about this. The toxic nature of the show is hardly a surprise. I mean, the exchanges between Naga Munchetty and Charlie Stayt have literally made it clear that these two are the breakfast presenting team that hate each other the most since Susanna Reid and Piers Morgan. Watch.
And they tried to race against her. It reminds me slightly of when Mike Bushell endeavoured to take on a real race, a 60-metre indoor sprint race. And over 60 metres, I remember it vividly, Mike, good luck to him, tried, and these were proper athletes, and it was a proper race. And about about 20 metres in, they were near, you know, they were so far ahead of him, because you just don't see ordinary people against those superhumans very often.
Yeah.
They kind of race against each other, so it doesn't look that different.
So it looks even, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, would have been fun. Sarah?
I mean, okay, Alex Phillips, they despise each other, okay? Clearly they don't like sharing that sofa. It's interesting, though, isn't it, in television? It doesn't always mean, and I'd love to hear your personal experiences, Alex, but it doesn't always mean that it's not a good presenting combination because, for example, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner at the moment on GB News in the morning, they despise each other. It makes for really good viewing. Same thing with Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid. Same thing in the past. Do you remember with Eamon Holmes and Anthea Turner dating back all of that time? So you don't necessarily have to be Richard and Judy on the sofa to make good telly. But what's quite interesting about this for the BBC is I thought they had cleaned up their act, Alex, and it seems like it's out of control at Manchester with these claims of physical altercations and bitch fights behind the scenes.
I tell you what's really fascinating. So first of all, disclaimer, I have had two co-hosts in my career as a TV presenter. One was Simon McCoy, who I loved to the ends of the earth. I adored presenting with him. We became very firm friends. And the other was Kevin O'Sullivan. And likewise, he's one of my favorite human beings on this planet. We actually miss presenting together and would like to start doing that again. So not for me, this sort of bad chemistry with a television husband. But here's an interesting factoid for you. Back in 2016, I was speaking to a very good friend of mine, who I will not name, who was a senior producer at BBC Breakfast, 2016. So we're talking almost 10 years ago. She'd come to stay with me. And I said, what's it like at the Beeb? Because I'd worked at the Beeb before and personally never enjoyed it. And she said, you've got no idea. The bullying, the toxicity, the fights, the divisions, the cliques. And she said back then, 10 years ago, she was telling me how horrific and terrible the atmosphere at BBC Breakfast was. So when I read this report today, I thought to myself, well, that doesn't actually surprise me. I've heard this before. When it comes to Frediani, I have actually met Richard Frediani at one point in my life. He interviewed me for a job at, I think it was ITV Central, which must have been about 20 years ago or something now. Needless to say, I didn't actually get the job. but yeah, actually,
His loss.
His loss. Yeah, he phoned me up afterwards and said, I thought you were a little bit too cautious. I'd have liked you to be a bit more punchy in that interview. And it's funny, that bit of life advice I kept hold of, because look at me now, I don't hold back, do I? So I'd like to thank the man, because he actually gave me a brilliant piece of career advice, which I've remembered to this day. But no, I have heard for a long time that BBC Breakfast is an absolute viper's nest.
Fascinating. Emma Dunwell, I mean, don't you think that this is just completely a ticking time bomb for the BBC? I mean, we were told that after the Hugh Edwards debacle, after that cover-up where the man who announced the death of the late Queen Elizabeth II on air was actually a paedophile and lots of people at the BBC knew about his behaviour and did nothing, we were told that there was meant to be a total clean act coming in, and yet this all seems to be unravelling on BBC Breakfast.
Well, this is just the mainstream media in a nutshell,
True.
isn't it? I mean,
True.
It wasn't too long ago that it was coming out in the news that they'd broken their own editorial guidelines over 1,500 times. So, you know, convicted paedophiles as hosts and bullying behind closed doors, I suppose, shouldn't really be a surprise to anyone. This is what you don't find usually within citizen journalism, which is why the Overton window has shifted, because people feel like they're watching and interacting with people that they can trust, that will actually give them the truth, that are hopefully not horrible people behind closed doors. And the BBC just time and time again keep proving themselves as examples of very dysfunctional professional settings, or unprofessional settings, I guess I should say.
And lying to the viewers about the truth. I mean, Alex Phillips, Emma makes a point, doesn't she? Like, isn't the whole point of where we're heading in our media landscape, right? Like total authenticity. So actually, you can't really pretend to be something you're not now, because people see through it immediately. And I think whether, you know, Naga, Munchetty and Charlie Stayt are nice people or not, like, it's bloody obvious they can't stand each other. So faking it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I think to some degree, Emma's got a very good point, but a lot of presenting, I'm afraid, is faking it, isn't it? Otherwise, I'd sit there for 3 hours doing a show on talk and I'd pick my nose, scratch. I do scratch a lot on air because I'm an itchy person. Cough, shovel, pork scratchings into my mouth with a pint of cider. There is like an artifice to presentation, okay? There is an artifice to working in the electric media. Even now, I'm sitting here, I'm nicely framed up and I'm not sort of doing the things I just listed above. It would be rather uncouth. And so similarly, if you've got two co-hosts who decide they don't like each other, you don't actually expect them to start, pulling each other's hair out live on TV. But at the same time, if it had been reported that the atmosphere was so toxic and so bad at BBC Breakfast 10 years ago, you've got to wonder why on earth changes hadn't been made to improve the situation. And I think part of the problem is at the BBC that there's such an embedded culture of right honory, of wokeism, of lefty liberal media, that if you happens to be somebody who didn't subscribe to that, you better blimmin' well not confess to it, hide your light under a bushel and stay stum, or you're going to find yourself ostracised. It's interesting because, someone like Simon McCoy was a beloved BBC presenter for so long, and all of a sudden he pops out the other side and is like, wow, you're a Brexiteer, who knew? Whereas I think what helps, when I was at GB News and now I'm at Talk is a wonderful place to work, frankly. I love all my colleagues there. We all are genuinely a very, very happy family. But what helps is, by and large, we all sing from the same hymn sheet. We're fighting the same campaigns. We believe in the same things. And it isn't this sort of, big bureaucratic behemoth, overstaffed, over-resourced, that the BBC is, which has this ridiculous mindset, which I'd imagine a lot of people at the BBC happily subscribe to, but there must be individuals who pull in the opposite direction.
Yeah, it really is. And Emma, I'm fascinated by the work that you're doing at Resistance GB, because for folk who don't know, this is a truly independent new news outlet. Well, I say new, you've been going for quite a few years now. Big interviews with a lot of people who the mainstream media, or a lot of topics the mainstream media just won't touch.
Well, yeah, I mean, we cover anything freedom-based, really. We've covered anything from the farmers' rallies contesting against inheritance tax, and specifically around these kinds of issues and regarding freedom of speech. One of my favorite conversations, I'll admit, is Howard Cox, because he's just absolutely lovely. But, we spoke about his expulsion from the Reform Party for speaking out about Tommy Robinson. The shift from mainstream media to independent journalism is so needed because there are people in positions of power, or who used to be in positions of power, who have been cast out for having the same views as the general populace. And it allows us to feel connected again to people who could once again one day be in power, and reestablishes that trust that no one has in the government at the moment.
And of course, also not regulated by the off-communist, which is such an important thing, because it's why you get that total faux balance and all of that very annoying stuff. So no, I think Resistance GB is doing brilliant work. And of course, Alex Phillips, you can also find on Substack. That's what she said. It's actually a very sad day for us here at Outspoken, because we lost a legend, a TV legend, one of my favourite guests ever. We're going to be paying tribute to Kim Woodburn in just one moment, in a way that she would approve of, right? So we're going to celebrate some of her wildest, most crazy moments. And as I say, if you knew Kim Woodburn, you knew that this is exactly how she would want to go out. So we're going to do that in just 1 minute. Don't go anywhere. But first, if you're anything like me, you have spent so much time trying to find the perfect skincare treatments for your face, only to realise you've been neglecting the skin on your neck. But as I've got older, I've noticed that's a massive oversight, because the neck is on display all the time, yet so many folk treat it as an afterthought in their routine. I mean, I know I fell into that trap. And so many women in our Outspoken audience have told me that the skin on your neck is actually thinner, more delicate and less oily than facial skin, which means it requires specialised care. That's why I was completely blown away when I received my Go Pure Tighten and Lift Neck Cream. It's a product which is transforming the necks of women and some men like me all across the globe. It's such a gorgeous product too. I saw a noticeable difference within weeks, and I know it can become a game changer for you too. Outspoken viewers and listeners get 25% off GoPure using the code DAN, that's D-A-N at checkout. Just head to gopure.com/Dan, use code DAN, and you're all set. Now, GoPure's proprietary firming complex is designed to visibly firm and smooth the skin on your neck and chest in as little as 4 to 8 weeks. A consumer study, 100% of users said their skin looked more supple, 97% noticed a firmer appearance. Indeed, GoPure's full line of science-backed skin and body care have delivered for over 100,000 real women with real results. It is dermatologist recommended and cruelty-free. Plus, with over 1 million jars sold, this beauty secret, well, it's no longer a secret, is it? So tighten, lift, and restore elasticity in your neck because your skincare routine shouldn't stop at your jawline. For a limited time, Outspoken viewers and listeners get 25% off GoPure using the code DAN, that's Dan, at checkout. So just head to gopurebeauty.com/Dan, use the code Dan, and you're all set. Oh, and by the way, after you buy, please do me a favor. When they ask where you heard about GoPure, tell them it was after watching Outspoken. But now, back to the show. I can't tell you how many messages I've had today about the death of Kim Woodburn. 83 years old, a true legend of the TV industry. And I think the reason that so many people have reached out is because they knew that this woman was very special to me. Truly one of the all-time great British TV icons. And for me personally, my all-time favourite guest on every show I've worked on. I mean, I have literally worked with Kim Woodburn through my time at ITV Daytime, appearing on Big Brother together, then at Talk Radio, GB News, and latterly where she gave what has turned out to be her final interview on Outspoken, which you can watch on our YouTube channel right now. But the reason that Kim Woodburn was so special, right, was because she was a cleaner who found fame late in life and never forgot her working class roots, never forgot that she used to spend 8 hours a day, as she would put it, cleaning loos, cleaning bathrooms, sometimes for very rich people. And as a result, she had absolutely no time for the prissiness, the diva behavior, and the duplicity of the TV industry. And that's why I loved Kim, right? Because she would call a spade a spade. She would call out the fellow celebrities, whether it be Philip Schofield or Holly Willoughby. And so when I was working at The Sun's Bizarre column, that's the big showbiz column in The Sun, and I was the editor there for a number of years, I wasn't able to attend the National Television Awards one year. And I thought, oh my goodness, let's do something different. Let's do something wild. Let's send Kim Woodburn to the NTA red carpet to terrorize the celebrities. And as you can imagine, it went viral for all the right reasons. Watch.
If Ant and Det win one more bloody time, I'll show my bare bum in King Street. Nobody's been winning it 16 or 17 times. If they win again tonight, it's a bloody cheat.
The loose women cast are coming now.
Who?
The loose women.
Oh, not Colleen Nolan. Don't tell me she's coming in here. Thank God. Oh, ladies, come to me now.
Are you a chicken-living little
Who's it for? Bazaar, dear. Who? Bazaar. What do you mean, who? So common,
Get
so
your
common.
mic up.
Kim, do you want to try and get Peter Andre in a second?
I'm older than her, Peter. You're looking as a handsome debonair self.
Isn't she nice?
That's a gorgeous.
Thank you.
Well, I'm nice or you're not wanted. Get out of my I'm speaking. Oh, you've been in shot too long. You're a greedy pig. Come here. Now, what is it with you and Gemma?
Would you like me to end up with her?
No. Shall I tell you why?
Go on.
She's a lovely girl, but she'd live in filth. I don't dislike her, but she's nuts. Gemma Collins. Gemma, dear, come to me.
Gemma was there.
She's too posh to speak, you see. I thought she was as common as muck myself.
Go and try her again.
No, she's obviously no. You see, when you're as posh as Gemma Collins and you work in Towie, you don't speak to the likes of me. Oh God, no.
Just hilarious. Honestly, so many of the celebrities just saw Kim and ran because they knew you couldn't mess with that sharp tongue. And it was a couple of her appearances on GB News that many of you have pointed out to me today were your favourite moments. You've sent in a whole load of them. So I chose two. The first was Kim Woodburn on Carol Vorderman.
Well, Carol Vorderman, she's gone, Matt. She's nutty, dear, isn't she? I mean, my
What
God,
happened to her? She used to be quite nice.
She walks in front of you, looks like a bum's two pigs fighting in a sack. With
Kim, it's not about the size of a person's bottom.
Well, you've got to admit, she's always talking about that, Jenny. But look, fascinating debate. Sorry about the tech issues. I feel like I'm on a ship. Carol.
And if you're not prepared to tell the truth, don't come on.
Oh, God. They wouldn't do that on GB News these days. And then this was the one that captured the imagination and left me genuinely gobsmacked. Kim Woodburn on Holly Willoughby.
But Kim, Holly Willoughby is saying that she wants to come back and launch this new show next Monday. Should she not be given the chance to do that?
My love, that little bitch. I'll bet she does, darling.
Kim, why would you say that? What's Holly done wrong? What's Holly done wrong?
In all the years she's been on that show, she's never taken part. All we hear is, oh, Philip, oh, Philip.
Yes, but she wants to take charge now, Kim. She thinks this is her moment.
That woman, she aided and abetted him to take a big salary. Get shut of that little impy, wimpy little woman. She will not be missed.
And look, during my last interview with Kim, she spoke about why she couldn't put up with that celebrity nonsense.
I'm a kind person.
You are.
Do you know what, my love? But I tell it like it is because what's the point of doing anything else? Let's stop falsifying and lying and covering things we know should be exposed. Stop!
So true. And that was Kim Woodburn's last interview. She died aged 83 after a short illness. Her husband is distraught, devastated. They were such a tight couple for so many years. And I'm personally devastated because I feel like we're losing these legends of the entertainment industry. And Kim Woodburn was a legend. She was iconic, right? Let me bring back my superstar panel, Emma Dunwell and Alex Phillips. Alex, the thing is, right, Kim's story was genuinely inspirational. Like, she was the first person alongside Aggie, you know, it was Kim and Aggie on How Clean Is Your House, the Channel 4 show, who became famous because she was a cleaner. And that's what was so cool about it.
Yeah, and you know, I always like it when you've got these sort of people who, by force of character, by having some sort of energy, despite where they come from, just steal the nation's hearts. And you're right, there's not enough people like that. I mean, look, I'm the sort of person, quite frankly, I much prefer going down to a Wetherspoons than a private members club because I was brought up in Gloucester. Mostly I worked in the nightclubs and bars and pubs of Gloucester. And when I moved to London, what I found was a bit of a culture shock because a lot of people in London are frankly assholes. You know, they don't like talking, they don't like gossiping, they're pretentious, they don't actually show their true self, they hold on to these sort of popular trendy ideologies, and I can't get on board with them. You know, I always say that the wonderful thing about the working class is because they haven't lived a sheltered existence, they see the world exactly as it is because there's nothing constraining their view. And I find myself far more drawn to members of the working class than hoity-toity, hair-flicky, pretentious, you know, lefty metropolitan liberals. That's just me. You know, that's my cohort, and I'm pretty sure that actually Kim and I would have had a brilliant old time down the pub.
Oh my God, you would have. You absolutely would have. She was a riot. That was the thing. She was so fun. And Emma Dunwell, what she always used to say to me, she's like, Dan, I will tell you the truth. No one else will, because I'm in my 80s. I've earned more money than I ever believed was possible. You know, I was a cleaner for most of my life, so I never ever thought that I would have this money. And so I don't need to be on TV. I'm not trying to make friends with anyone. And what was so incredible in recent years, Emma, is she became such a gay icon and so popular amongst young people that she was like a massive hit on the app Cameo, where people like Nigel Farage are really popular too, because people just were desperate for Kim to make them a message where sometimes she'd be a little bit rude to them. And again, I've had so many people send me their Kim Woodburn messages today, and they say any time that I'm feeling down, I always put this message on, and it reminded me of Kim. And I thought, oh, what a lovely, crazy legacy.
Well, again, I mean, these are the kinds of people that the public want to connect with. These are the people that make them feel seen and make them feel heard. I mean, I don't know too much about Kim other than I watched her on Big Brother, and she was always on the TV when I was little because my nan absolutely loved her. You know, my mom was a cleaner, so I completely identify with the whole. People don't identify with the hoity-toity. It's basically just echoing what Alex said. People want relatability. People want someone that they can say, you know, yeah, I feel like I'd be able to sit down and have a cuppa with you, because that's what people want. And Kim strikes me as the type of person that even before all the fame and everything, after she'd made all the money and everything like that, she would still have said exactly how it is, and that is why people liked her. That's why people loved her.
Absolutely. Well, I loved her. These are her favorite pictures that we're showing, by the way, because the one thing Kim would have hated was if I used a shot that she wasn't happy with. So very happy to announce that Kim Woodburn is today's greatest Briton, nominated by our very own Darren Donaldson of the Dan Wootton Outspoken Club on X. He is such a fan of Kim and is so upset about this. He wrote, "The best reality TV queen was also a part of the Outspoken family and one of a kind. We will miss her humour, wit, and way of words that only she could get away with." Wonderfully put. Alex Phillips, Emma Dunwell, thank you so much. And lots more feedback coming in from you on the big issue of the day, which is, of course, the rape gang scandal cover-up and specifically Tommy Robinson's involvement in it. Thank you, Arbiter, for the super chat. He writes, "Cared the traitor Starmer to protect his party, himself, and the rapist over our children. Do not forgive or forget. Don't let him rewrite history. He has as much honesty as a stone has blood." Traxman said, this is in regards to our Union Jackass nominees, Jess Phillips, Emily Maitlis, and Yvette Cooper. "All three should be accountable, and everyone who was involved in their cover-up and Tommy Robinson should be given an OBE for bringing this to the public eye." Jenny Chilton wrote, "Tommy has every right to be angry. He and Maggie Oliver have been on it for decades. We won't let them rewrite history." Tommy. Jack Spring says, "The inquiry may be happening now, but the state will still cover up, defer, marginalise, and try to wear down and drag out." Kath Lissenden said, "Stacey Dooley, now Lefty Lovey of the BBC, did a very interesting documentary in Luton many years ago. She went to school with Tommy. She wouldn't make that documentary now. She wouldn't have a career." I didn't know that, actually. I'll have a look at that. And Chow Paul, on this whole civil war within GB News over Tommy Robinson, says, "GB News could have been proud that one of their presenters did much to highlight this, Mr. Mark Stein, but sadly they sacked him and now no glory." So, a reminder of those Union Jackass nominees: Jess Phillips, nominated by Karen Hankey for raising a smile and laugh when the Casey report was being discussed. Yvette Cooper, nominated by the Grift Report because of the Pakistani grooming gang cover-up and trying to blame the, quote, far right. And Emily Maitlis, nominated by Trooper 237, who says she owes Rupert Lowe a massive apology for calling him racist. You could see the snaring anger pouring out of her. Vile. And in third position with 14% of your vote today, Emily Maitlis. The runner-up with 27% of the vote, Yvette Cooper. But today's Union Jackass, after that disgusting and actually, I believe, downright evil appearance in the House of Commons yesterday, Jess Phillips. She should resign. She should resign or be sacked. Now we're going to move to Substack for the Uncancelled After Show with Angela Levin, because Meghan Markle has given her longest interview yet, demanding the truth be revealed about her in a 90-minute podcast with Kardashian ally Emma Grede. But let me tell you, she should be careful what she wishes for. So our royal mastermind, Angela Levin, and I have watched this latest car crash, so you don't have to. We will bring you all of the lowlights. So please do come and join us at Substack. We're going to have so much fun with this one. www.outspoken.live is the address. But it is great to be back live with you. I've missed you the past week, so we're back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and Rumble. Just turn on the notification bell. Make sure you turn it to be alerted to all new videos, because then you will literally get an alert when we're next on. So I'll see you tomorrow, but most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.